Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast, learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 33, and we'll be talking to Marchello Arcelay, who is a waste stream analyst in the state of Georgia. He specializes in working in manufacturing, logistical, and real estate industries. With over 20 years' experience, Marchello successfully collaborates with his clients to provide sustainability, recycling, and waste solutions that is scalable. Now he's going digital. He's embraced Clubhouse, LinkedIn Live, and YouTube to help others with all that he's experienced and continues to learn. So no matter what industry you are in, be sure to check him out. Hello and welcome to Marchello. How are you, Marchello?
Hey, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to have you on the show because I want to learn a little bit more about you. I see you've been pretty busy on LinkedIn and also on Clubhouse, where you've been, I want to say, an advocate for sustainability and what that looks like in your world and in your life. Do you want to share a little bit about how you got onto that road and how you got onto that path?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking. It's nothing in life happens per chance. But I felt there was. I worked in several different tech companies and also did marketing for them as well. So much so that at one point I semi-retired. It was a scenario that I had too much time in my hand. And essentially my wife said, you know what, Marchello, is it possible for you to get some sort of structure back into your life? So I went back into the job field. This company called me. I looked at myself. I looked at the email. I'm like, a waste company? Oh, well, okay. I'm game. My experience in the past was in advertising and marketing. And when I walked in and met with my future manager, I remember like it was yesterday, she asked me, why do you want to join X company? Any reason why? I mean, I'm looking at your resume. I see your experience. I see what you've done. And the role that it was going to be a customer service, answering calls, things of that nature, and like in a call center type setup. And I told her, like I just said, my wife needs me to have structure in my life. You should have seen her face. It just lit up like, okay, perfect. You're exactly who we want, someone that needs structure. So needless to say, I went in there, pun intended, green, not really knowing much about the industry, having an idea of what's recyclable, the typical, plastic, paper, aluminum, but having no understanding of how the business runs and the challenges a lot of businesses deal with and face on a daily basis. And those are the things that I help organizations to ensure and implement sustainable recycling and waste programs. Now, I never thought it was going to be as impactful how much it feeds my soul, because when I sit down and talk to business owners, individuals that are responsible implementing these solutions, I'm quite passionate. And sometimes I have to taper it back to the point like, okay, I have to like know my audience and understand if they're as passionate as I am, because I don't want to come across as a tree hugger.
Right. I guess when you look at it from one perspective, the opportunities find you. Even though you come from the experience of marketing, tech, advertising, and not even possibly thought about the waste and the sustainability world, but somehow and for some reason, that opportunity has presented itself.
Correct.
In that new environment that you've never been exposed to. Do you feel there's a correlation as to why it's shown up for you in this light, and you're looking at it now in the lens of supporting others and being energized about a topic that would never even come across your radar before?
That's a good question. Ironically, I never thought about it in that fashion, meaning the parallels of sustainability and the life of, I'm holding up a piece of paper or a plastic bottle, the life of that evolves, meaning when it's manufactured, the process that it takes to manufacture it, and ultimately the consumption of it, and then sadly the death. And then at this point, then reincarnated back to the original state. Well, as I say that, yeah, I guess you start thinking it's almost like a father. Every time I'm interacting with my clients' waste concerns, I'm essentially taking on their children, if you want to say that, and making sure that I care for them just like if it was my own.
But in the same token, the nurturing aspect of who you are as a father to a child, perhaps, or building that relationship is not a new experience for you.
No, actually, it's quite the contrary. And I've been in the sustainability industry for just shy of 10 years. But now at this point, I'm still learning. I still want to be clear. I'm still learning because there's always different ways. And even though our industry moves slowly, but when it moves decisively. So I've learned quite a bit. And now at this point, I want to give back. And the timing of this opportunity to have a chat with you today is quite timely because for the past 7 weeks, like you mentioned earlier, I've had discussions on Clubhouse, and I've rebroadcast these discussions on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook because I want to find a way to give back and also educate the regular person. You know what I mean? Obviously, it helps to bring on people that I work with, which I did that last week, but at the same time, learning together. Learning and sharing what we know and exchanging best practices. At the end of the day, the purpose of what I'm doing is to educate and also changing people's behaviors one person at a time. It sounds cliche, but it actually does work. If you actually, if you see someone in your workspace or even at home and you see that they should be rinsing out that container before tossing it into the recycling container, if you see that, why don't you voice that? Or, at this point, if you think that is going to be a problem, do it yourself. You know what I mean? And I say that it's almost as simple as when you walk down the street and you see something on the floor. Would it be too much to pick it up? It's the same thing. Now, think about what I just said. Would it be too much to pick it up? Right? You thinking, well, I'm not going to impact someone's life. Marchello said, try to impact someone one day at a time and one person at a time. That's correct. But the fact is, imagine this. You walking down the street, you see that can on the floor, that straw, whatever it is, and you pick it up. Is there a possibility that someone's watching you? Just happens to see you do that? That person might end up do it when they see it. And they might actually bring it to someone else's attention. I think that when it comes down to character, people's character and motives, you really see it when no one's actually looking. And it's kind of weird based on what I just said, but you do the right thing, not because people are looking, because it's the right thing.
I guess it really, to a certain degree, comes down to your inner moral compass, your own sincerity and authenticity in who you are as a human being. Because as we know, doing things for others to see and to receive accolades is very much an ego-driven act, which we all know. We've all been in the position where we've done it that way and it really doesn't serve us very well. But when you bring it down and drop that decision and that aspect of yourself into a heart-centered space, it comes with a different depth. It comes with a different meaning behind it, which is exactly what you're saying. Doesn't matter what other people are looking at. What doesn't matter what other people are saying. You do it with your own compass. You do it with your own free will. What is it do you feel defines who you are? Having all these experiences in the professional world, your personal life, and venturing into territories new and old, do you feel that they define Marchello?
I would say when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is a chalkboard, meaning that we all been to school, or we have a concept of what a chalkboard is. It's what you want it to be, meaning that you could write it, you could change it, you could erase it. Now, the foundation is still there, meaning the chalkboard for me. However, I look for different ways how to enhance how people perceive me and how I could help. And it's a combination of two things, meaning that you have to know your audience. And that's what I mean by how people perceive you, and how you can help. Meaning that even though I know that what my foundation is, which goes back to the chalkboard, I'm constantly evolving, and I question things, and I don't just take things the way they are. Meaning when I interact with clients and even life, I usually question and push back and ask why. I like to ask those hard questions for two reasons. It allows me to understand better,
Mhm.
and also it challenges my family and also my people that interact the way they're thinking.
Yeah.
How often someone tells you, well, this is how it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yes.
No, but that's how it's been. But as long as you've known it, any reason why you never question it, it could be any different.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to approach it from the perspective of what can we do differently? Is it possible to make the scenario better? If not, that's fine. However, let's try to explore it in a way that let's find more efficient ways and reinvent the wheel. Well, the wheel's already invented. Why try to reinvent it? Well, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Try to get out of that complacent mindset, choosing a growth mindset. It's is an amazing way to live life. I choose the energy that comes in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's very powerful how we do have a choice, but we often forget because we feel possibly a sense of obligation to respond in a certain manner that is being positioned as status quo, social norms, social etiquettes. What does all that look like? I like the fact that you have taken charge of that situation in making a choice of what I choose kind of goes, owning your own space and your own energy, of course. It's powerful to see that, and it's powerful and reassuring to my ears that there are more people out there like you who do that, because that's exactly what I do. So it's refreshing to hear. What do you feel are some of the biggest attributes that put you in that position, other than curiosity and asking that big question of why?
I've always loved learning. You think about different resources that we have now. The best one is the internet. Then the next thing is that is on the internet, YouTube. It's endless hours of knowledge that you can learn. I guess for me, I've always wanted to find a way how I could impact the world. What can I contribute to society? I know that's a big grandiose to think about that, but I don't think about it in the point that I'm thinking about, well, if I do this, I'll be able to have a meeting with the president. No, if I see it that if I do X, something as simple as I'm able to reduce my carbon footprint, my individual carbon footprint. Something as simple as that. That's how I see it. And not necessarily for me to project my gospel on them, but going back to what I said earlier, to challenge your thinking. That's essentially what I like to do. My job is to make sure that we're a good fit. And I challenge them, and sometimes to my own detriment. But I like to challenge them and ask that same question I asked earlier. Why? Why are we meeting today? what are the things that you're doing now that you're happy with? What are the things that you doing now that you're not happy with? And try to have them start thinking differently rather than having a very transactional experience. Because essentially, for that matter, I don't have to be in the equation. You could visit my company's website, you could click on a specific product and put your credit card, and that's it.
Yeah.
I want to provide an experience after the initial meeting, and I provide a solution, and that's over. The experience is the lifespan of the relationship. We, meaning you and I, will determine when that ends. Now, even though it might end for contract reasons, it should not end there, meaning that it's quite common for me to still continue dialogue with ex-clients or even clients that might have left the company that they worked at. When I met them, I still continue the dialogue because at one point there was something that we had in common.
Right.
Why ended there? And you'd be surprised.
It's ultimately the intention, and I feel the connection that you build. And we've talked about this a fair bit about the relationship. It's not about the sale. It's not about signing the dotted line. It's not about the life cycle of the service, but it's the life cycle of the relationship, which I think is so impactful. And also even bringing it back to what is it that makes you you? And what are some of the attributes? And you talked about an analogy about the life cycle of a piece of paper, which I thought was really interesting because even though as human beings, yes, we are fresh and clean as young adults, and then we get a little bit tarnished as we get older and a little more wrinkled and crumpled as we get way older. And yes, there is a death process. But I think the death process is a beautiful aspect because that's how we evolve. We grow into something more. So be it from a human level and a relationship perspective, but also from the perspective of the piece of paper, literally the piece of paper, that changes and that evolves and that supports the planet, the nature, as simple as a piece of paper. And that's what I truly feel we're here to do. And it sounds like you've been able to find that from all those why questions that you have been probing at along your journey and continue to, which I think is such a beautiful curiosity to have in life.
Thank you. And I have to be remiss if I don't say that not everyone that I speak to when I push back are willing to open the door and say, or yeah, I never thought about it that way. Often I do get someone that says, yeah, I'm not going to answer that question. Let me get X and I needed to be serviced 3 times. And that's fine. And you're going to have those scenarios that are transactional, but then I still push back and say, that's fine. Please consider this, regardless who you're interacting with, find ways to partner with them and have them see your vision. You'd be surprised where that relationship goes.
Absolutely. I think it's often also based on the intention. XYZ transaction done, or is the intention to look on a deeper level and maybe plant a few seeds along the way about what is ultimately that individual's moral compass? If they see that piece of paper on the floor, are they going to pick it up or they're just going to walk by it? So I think intentions are really powerful within that space. So going back to your chalkboard analogy, what is your intentions moving forward? We know it's what you've garnered and created over the years, but what is it you want to put on that chalkboard for the future?
I've thought about essentially that question, and I put it this way. I've often asked, what's the legacy that I'm going to leave behind when I'm sitting out in the backyard in my home, or maybe even in the front porch when it's raining? Those are the times that I sit back and just have I guess it might be deep thoughts with Marcello or Arcelay. That could be the kind of time that I should pull out and record what I'm thinking. And that's when I start questioning my purpose. At the end of the day, to make an impact in people's lives. And it has a lot to do with obviously sustainability, recycling, and how waste is handled. But at the same time, try to find ways to holistically impact people's way of thinking. And I say that I might go into it to provide a solution, provide a product.
Mm-hmm.
However, the outcome is to impact their lives forever. I know it might seem kind of deep from a salesman, like, come on, guy, you're providing trash and recycling services. It's not that deep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But
why can it not be?
mm-hmm.
Who's to say? And I go back to what I said earlier. Why couldn't it be?
Yeah. Just based on the lens and the intention and the mark that you want to leave in your life. What is that legacy looking like? And I keep coming back to that moral compass, your own standard of being human on this planet. What does that contribution look like? Are you really going to walk past when you see a couple of pieces of paper on the floor? It's not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that attitude and those aspects filter out in other areas of life, right?
Yes, it does. I mean, unfortunately, mind you, it goes back to what I said earlier about the character aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not sure if someone is known to say this, but my parents said this a long time ago, that people's character, the acts of what they're doing or how they carry themselves when someone is not looking. I'm not sure if that's the definition, but that's always been the definition that has been instilled in me from my parents. Life is all about choices.
Mm-hmm.
Often we don't think about, every decision that we do is based on instinct.
Mm-hmm.
If you took the time to think about that act, that decision, that choice, how better your life will be. Someone sends you an email and they're unhappy about something, or let's say they're berating you in an email, or you're behind of a deadline and you choose to fib for the excuse of why you didn't make the deadline. It could be anything. So the fact is, the choices that you make is what impacts people's lives, even your own. Let's use the example about the deadline. You say, well, the reason why I didn't make my deadline is because my child was sick. Okay. But then if that happens enough times, guess what? You're the person that don't meet your deadlines because there's always an excuse. If that happens often enough, you know. And even if your scenario is legitimate, you fall into that category of the guy that, or the boy that cried wolf.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
And, you think about how that impacts your life professionally and personally. But the fact is, knowing that those decisions were made, those choices were selected at that point, now that you're aware of it, and quite frankly, now that you know where you're at, what are you going to do to impact tomorrow?
That's right. That's right.
Something as simple as making sure that the paper is tossed in the right container. The container is rinsed out before putting it inside the recycling bin, or taking responsibility when someone asks, why did you not make the deadline? Something as simple as that. So, and that's something that I am learning. And that's what I said earlier. I'm learning every single day. Or when I see myself or my former self, because I'm constantly evolving. But when I see my former self in family, friends, colleagues, I make an effort to say, hey, wouldn't you want to change that? I say this to say, I give an example. Today, I had a conversation with a colleague of mine, and he shared that, let me give you set up the story. he's having a home being built for his family. And if people that are listening to this that are familiar with that knows that it's a very tumultuous and challenging experience, but at the same time, it is very fruitful, right? Because you're essentially watching a creation, something being made, right?
Yes.
But there's a lot of decisions.
You
see, there's a trend here, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in this scenario, he shared with me that the manufacturing company of the flooring installed the wrong flooring in their home. And he shared with me the process, the conversation, and the outcome, which was favorable in this case. Obviously, but they're going to be replacing the flooring. The fact is, the reason why I'm bringing that up is that he was keen to tell me that if they did not get this flooring installed by the time that their closing came, it was going to impact their mortgage, how much it was going to cost. So I bring that up because I said to him afterwards, I said, well, I guess you could use this experience as a learning experience. What if Jack, let's say his name is Jack. What if, Jack, you would have asked that extra question to the manufacturer? Maybe 2 more questions. Ultimately could have impacted the positive or the right outcome initially to have the right flooring installed the first time. Mind you, when I brought that up, he did not suggest that that could not been done, implying that when I challenged him or brought it up, he might have thought to himself, yeah, I guess I could have asked that other question or a second question. So I said to him, now that you experienced this, you could use this same experience in your career and ask that extra 1, 2, 3 question, or back to what I said earlier, why? So that's the key thing. And now the reason why I said it is that think about what I said earlier, how things trickle down. You said it was going to affect his loan. Now, what do you think that happened? He said he'd been dealing with this for the past couple of days. Is there a good chance that his job was impacted? I mean, his work output was impacted because he was overwhelmed with this problem? Was there maybe his follow-up with his existing clients could have been impacted because he prioritized his time? Potentially, do you see how this works? It's huge. Even though it's something as simple as flooring, that's why I said before earlier, I try to understand my audience prior to I start going into it like this. As you hear and feel my passion, I try to make sure that I understand my audience before I start sharing my thoughts, because I don't want to come across and someone look at me like a deer in headlights. Like, okay, where do I sign?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Totally valid point. Absolutely. There is a ripple effect that happens. And there's an analogy that is also used, the ripple effect in the world of energy. And I want to bring that same analogy back to an emotion of how there is a ripple effect when you make the choice to smile at somebody when you're walking down the street, or you make a choice to say something more positive to somebody, as opposed to just making it a very concrete transactional dialogue. Where do we get the opportunity to just breathe and just come in center and get off the autopilot train that's dictated to us so much from the outside world? Make the choice to come back into your heart. And yes, it might sound very frou-frou and a bit out there, but try it before you mock it. Come into that space, coming into the heart and doing things from an intention from the heart. which is what I'm hearing echoing really loud from our conversation from you today, is come in with the intention and ask those curious questions as to why this is happening. And not go on autopilot, not go on default, not follow suit just because everybody else is driving a white car. I'm going to drive a white car. Like, what does it matter? There's more to it than that. There's more to all the stuff that we can collect. And ironically, yes, we have to be mindful from a sustainability standpoint of where does that go beyond that? Because the life cycle of that piece of paper will continue. It'll either harm us or it'll support us. We have that choice.
I held my hands up like if I was praying when you said about smiling to someone when you see them, you know, a perfect stranger. And I go back to what I said, I go back to the gentleman that I mentioned. We call him Jack. I told Jack months ago, Jack, what about, and this is something I incorporated, I would say maybe 8 months. I've been doing this actively, intentionally. I'm sorry. That's the word I want to use. Everyone that's listening to this right now, you all been there before. You look up, you're sitting down at a park bench. Someone's walking by. You look up and then you look back down. What about if you actually look up and acknowledge them? And just say hello or smile, or like how guys say, give them a nod. Hey, why not?
Right.
I've been doing that intentionally, I would say, for over 8 months.
Nice.
And I think about this, if you're struggling with having those hard conversations, think about this. If you spent your entire day, whenever you interacted with a perfect stranger, you acknowledge them and you say hello. Or if you're a guy, you know, guys give the head nod. Hey, I feel that that kind of behavior, it's like putting deposits into your courage account. You're building more courage for that when that time comes when you need to ask those hard questions. You already build enough into that account that you feel confident that you could do that. On a personal level, I wanted to share why I feel so passionate about choices and how my role in the sustainability industry means so much to me. You could definitely find parallels into this. This past Monday, it was my anniversary of when my mom passed. It's been over 20 years. Now, I know that it's not the same thing as trash, but my decisions ultimately is the same thing as what we talked about earlier. We didn't have the best relationship, my mom and dad. They did a great job raising me. However, I didn't have the best relationship. And mind you, best is relative. You know, someone looking outside in often will say, man, you got the latest game. You got the latest Nintendo. You know, and not saying that, you know, that's all you need to have a great life. But I made a decision years ago to discontinue that relationship. And in doing so, subsequently, years after that, my mom passed. And given that I chose not stay in a constant conversation, a friend of a friend had to call where I worked and leave a message that my mother has passed. Think about the decisions you make today, how that could impact your life tomorrow. I wish I made a different choice over 20 years ago. I'm dealing with it now. I know that's a bit deep, given that we're talking about recycling and the life cycle of a paper. But essentially, if you treat the things in your life now, something as simple as a paper cup, in the same fashion as how you would treat your loved ones, how that would impact your loved ones to come in the future.
Thank you, Marchello, for sharing that very vulnerable and intimate piece. And to bring it back to the paper analogy, there is a death, but there's also a rebirth. So yes, you may not be here in the physical, but the opportunity for that rebirth of that conversation and dialogue with her is still there. And that's the choice that you have been given. What a blessing.
Thank you.
Marchello, I feel like I could talk to you way longer about all of this stuff. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I really trust that everybody who listened will hopefully take a nugget or two from this conversation. And if anything, just smile. It's so simple. Thank you so much again, Marchello.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.